Good evening and welcome to a night of trickster magic with a masterful storyteller and interpreter of cultural memes and symbols. I'm Georgia Kelly, the director of Praxis Peace Institute, and I am thrilled to introduce the fabulous speaker tonight. As most of you know, Caroline Casey is the host of the Visionary Activist Show on KPFA in the Bay Area. And I'm sure this is why most of you are here. You hear her show regularly. And she launched her first radio show with noted Jungian analyst James Hillman in 1996. And as we were talking about the other day, this is the Saturn return of her radio program. See, a lot of people are clued into that here, I can tell. Some audiences, you would say that and you'd get a blank look. You sure wouldn't get hoots, that's for sure. That, I think, is a milestone as well. And she uses astrology and mythological maps as guides, interpreting the great meta languages of antiquity and uniting everything of consequence, as you will see tonight. She has a degree in semiotics from Brown University and is the author of Making the Gods Work for You. She has offered mythological astrological news analysis for ABC's Nightline, CNN's Crossfire, CBS's Night Watch, and you didn't think she was on all those programs, I bet, did you? It's surprising. So, and in not 19, it was 2004, Carolyn was the last presentation at our conference that took place at Asilomar Conference Grounds in Pacific Grove. And this was called the Alchemy of Democracy. And we had incredible speakers there. Our Congresswoman Lynn Woolsey was one of the speakers. Tom Hayden was there. Our mayor, Larry Barnett, who was then mayor of Sonoma, the mayor of Sebastopol. We had an illustrious group of political people as well as really concerned citizens. And the person who closed that program was Caroline Casey. And her job was to weave all the ideas and thoughts that came through the conference that lasted almost a week. And she did such a brilliant job that I think everybody who was there will never forget. The tapestry she wove from all the different themes was extraordinary. So I know Larry Barnett, who was there, remembers it, and so do I. And we are thrilled to be able to bring her to Sonoma. So please give a warm welcome to Caroline Casey.
In danger, Trickster comes alive in us and in nature. So we're connecting to that. So Trickster medicine, many of you have been following me a long time, and some of you are new, brought by friends who are like, what is this? But so there's always sourdough starter things. Mercury's retrograde, we get to repeat things, but if it's familiar to you, just chant along, right? So Trickster medicine is the sine qua non because it renders all dedications effective. And that idea of participatory animism that we want to play with. There's many, many things breaking, but Adelita Grijalba was sworn in today, and she has 6 planets in Scorpio, so she's not fooling around. Whatever we love, whatever we're dedicated to, is how synchronicity will speak to us. So I love this language of astrology, and I know many of the particular degrees. Each degree, 360 degrees of the zodiac, has a quality of intelligence. So when Adelita was born and just sworn in, her Mercury, her sun's at 8 Scorpio, which is about rooting out corruption. The spicy witches come to join the other witches in DC, which is a Scorpio town. And her little asteroid Vesta is at 3 Scorpio, same degree as Zoran Mamdani's Mercury and Letitia James's Mercury, all at 3 Scorpio, which is performer in a ritual mystery play, politics as sacred magic. So we know that from the myths, that the Arthurian legends was an experiment to have spiritually cultivated people engaged in governance. And what happens at what passes for the end of that myth, because myths don't really end, they get put on pause, all the really hip people go away. Arthur goes off to Avalon to take Pilates classes with the priestesses, and and Merlin goes off with the nymph to douse themselves in patchouli oil. But to await the world's call at a time of danger. Almost all myths have this, which is the departure of the being to await the world's call at a time of danger. We go, now would be really good. And yeah, right, come on back. And High John the Conqueror, I invoke him often. Zora Neale Hurston wrote a great essay about him. High John was a folk hero in the South. And she says, he was not a man, but a will to hope. And then that will put on flesh, and that he would walk in rhythm like sound the earth like a drum. And he was interested in liberating those enslaved and those enslaving, liberating the entire atmosphere. That's what the egalitarian folk hero is interested in, is liberating the entire atmosphere. Like, how did this happen? We're going to play with that. So Adelita Grijalba also has her Mercury at 9 Scorpio. So for me, I go ding, 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 ding. If we look at the back of a $100 bill, there's a clock tower on it with a quite specific time. And the founding fathers, all Masons, were really into this. And if we do a chart for America using that time, it gives 9 Scorpio rising, whose image is a fellowship supper reunites old comrades. And we go, that's what this country is supposed to be. And here we are. And here she is carrying that. Her moon is at 13 Scorpio. That's Edward Snowden's moon, too. The image for that is telephone people installing links to other realities. It's the cosmic switchboard. And we go, that's great. And then it goes on. Her Jupiter, her Venus in Scorpio. The medieval men didn't like that. They go, Venus in Scorpio, that's too spicy and sexy. And we go, yes, excellent. Right. And her Neptune at 29 Scorpio, all coming alive, coming alive. So that's great. And then I was finding out what time she was sworn in, and the Wikipedia thing said, somebody took out the birth time as irrelevant. It's like, oh, muggles are everywhere. But we found it. So she was sworn in. She was elected September 23rd, right? She was sworn in today at 4:11 p.m. And that gave 6 Taurus rising. And for me, that's also a ding, 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 ding. The first 9/11 in this country was when the Mormons dressed up as native people and attacked a wagon train. And they said, oh, we see wagon train people that you're out of water. We will give you safe passage to water. And they were like, thank you very much. And the Mormons killed them all. And that was September 11th, 1857. And Pluto, not discovered, but still, Pluto was at 9 Scorpio, 9 Taurus. No, never mind. 6 Taurus, which is what was rising when Adelita was sworn in. And so I know that degree really well because its image is the woman of Samaria at the ancestral well, healing cross-cultural encounters around water. And it's like, no, you malefactors, you dementors, healing cross-cultural events around water. So she's coming in, potent. When Trayvon Martin was murdered by George Zimmerman, again, the moon was at 6 Taurus. And I like the Episcopalian minister saying, I want to live in a world where George Zimmerman offered Trayvon Martin a ride home in the rain, Oh, so welcome yeah, I mean, it's my quirky assignment, hometown, DC, besieged, but we welcome somebody with 6 planets in Scorpio. That's really great. So yes. And then just playing, when in a panic, invoke Pan, right? That's where it comes from. And, part of our trickster assignment is to look at everything sketchy and go, now, what did this want to be before it became corrupt or was constrained or orthodoxed? And so a friend of mine was in Israel a long time ago, and he just couldn't get comfortable until he climbed over barbed wire and followed the Jordan River to its source. And the Jordan River begins in a cave sacred to Pan. And again, animism. And we go participatory animism. We have a giant cauldron that Pluto provides us into which we can toss things. And I think speciesism is a good thing to toss into the cauldron. Part of our framework is a giant cauldron, Pluto, death, rebirth. We'll introduce all the planets. You don't need to believe in astrology. Just let it hum. It's an endogenous language. We have receptors for it, just like we have receptors for cannabis and DMT. We have receptors for mythology. And I'm listening to a fantastic Philip Pullman book, The Book of Dust. Can't recommend it highly enough. But the young boy being mentored, and the mentor says, well, Pythagoras' theorem, did the truth of that theorem exist before he gave the theorem? And it's like, yes. So was it invented or discovered? Just a nice distinction. And astrology, was it invented or discovered? As above, so below, corresponding. So, yeah, so what High John the Conqueror says is, we got to find a way out of no way and hit a straight lick with a crooked stick. So these trickster folk heroes come into play when we invite them. And I was spending time outside, right, with the fabulous honoring of the dead out there, which is huge and wonderful, because Pluto in Aquarius says it's going to be Halloween for 20 years, right? So, and I have no certainty about the mysteries of death, but I have things I root for. And a friend of mine, wonderful, 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 who just died, on his way out, I was asking, will you be part of the Ouija board of directors? And he's like, I'd be honored. Gotta go. And so I like the Ouija board of directors, and I like to think of, because I know so many great dead people. I mean, do we not all know so many great dead people? I want them to meet. I want to see them around us. I want to see them cheering us on. The word delusion comes from de ludo, which means out of the game. But the word illusion comes from in ludo, which means in the game. So we're meant to, and Jupiter chimes in and says, whether something's true or not is not really relevant at the moment. Is it a story you can ride? Is it a story that elicits enthusiasm, a wonderful word? So I like to think of the dead cheering us on and available as part of the Ouija board of directors for all of us. So in a moment, let's play this wonderful La Umba. My great collaborator, Ami, couldn't be in person with us right now because she's addressing her father's death, and so many, everybody has people they've lost. And it's crucial because the community of the grieving is vast. And we might say if we could cross country borders and then dissolve them to allow the community of the grieving to transcend borders. So this is Ami singing La Umba, and as she sings it, how she always guides us, and we're just here, Ami. Just think of all the beloved dead, known and unknown, in Gaza, in Israel, in Sudan, in our neighborhoods. So here's La Umba.
La umba waori, la umba waori, awao su, awao ma, lady o, opo egun kawe, la umba waori, la umba.
So Martin Prechtel says, for lack of grief, we go to war. And he'd forgotten when he came back to this country after 25 years in Guatemala that he said Americans know so little about grief, why we go to war. And grief is the authentic version of grievance, because grief is love, and grievance feeds tyranny and is harmful. What do we want? We want to throw grievance into the cauldron, right? To liberate grief. Yeah. And my two siblings died in February, and a cousin. And my sister could not recover from the loss of her husband. Just in deep, difficult grief. And I said, well, Janie, I like the New Orleans ritual of offering your first beverage in the morning to the dead. where you take your morning beverage out and you make a little circle in the air and you briefly throw the cup in, and then you go for the beloved dead and you see who's there. And I think remembering is crucial, because every now and then I go, oh, how could I have forgotten that person? And you pour a little libation for that person. For those whose names are forgotten, you pour a libation. For those whose bones lie beneath and upon this earth, you pour a little libation. And then you hold your cup up and you go, we, the living, salute you. And you take your first sip. And I told this to my sister, 15 years older, and she said, does it work? I'm like, work. I'm not sure that's the right verb. Does her beloved, so now at her memorial, I said, well, now, Janie, you're dead and I'm pouring coffee for you. So you tell us, does it work? We don't know. So yeah, so Trickster comes alive and experiment. I want to kind of introduce, all parts of our beautiful language, because astrology, I think really its deepest authentic self, what it is, rising to the occasion, it's one of the great guides of how to be a fully participatory Earth citizen. The planets, everything real, everything symbolic. The planets represent living qualities of intelligence that reside within us and connect us to the world. And so we all have, as I mentioned, the planets, and feel them. We all have the capacity for speaking. We all have the capacity to take what we love and translate it and spiral it forth into the collective realm. We're all remembering things. So I'm remembering a reading for a woman in Hong Kong years ago, but she was deeply dedicated to the power of music to really affect the molecules of reality. And she sent me some, and it's like, oh, it's really good. So she'd been going to go away and meditate for the world, but she heard my Trickster stuff, and she's like, Trickster, I'm back in. So she was returning to her job, which was writing the music for Cirque du Soleil. So I said to her, so you're smuggling liberating esoterica into mainstream disguised as entertainment? And she goes, yeah. And I just all these things, we want to expand our repertoire of responses and participation. And that's something that you can take home and just go, so I'm smuggling, fill in the blank, into mainstream disguised as whatever. All the planets that organized all the myths and things, have different voices. And Pluto also is about dark humor. So Pluto says to all of us, how do you describe yourself? Or what do you say to people when you introduce yourself? This is who I am, this is what I do. And Pluto says, whatever you say. Pluto goes, good cover. Good cover. We're all undercover agents disguised as whatever we think we are. And I like putting together, the different chapters of life. So I like self-referencing now as I'm an anarcho-entheo-astro-animist. And even then Pluto goes, good cover, right? So we love symmetry, complexity, wonder. And I love that Zoran Mamdani and Letitia James, both born on October 18th, which was the No King's Day recently, going, what a great solar return. And they both, like our new Adelita, have the same Mercury at 3 Scorpio, which is politics as sacred magic. And they're doing it. And Zoran Mamdani is born with the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction in Capricorn. Neptune, dreams, vision. Jupiter, curiosity and blessing. Jupiter in Capricorn says, I will study anything as long as it's useful. So big dreams and big competence. So Zoran Mamdani has that, and people born around his time. So does Harriet Tubman, the same degrees. So it's like Harriet Tubman passing the baton on to those of us too, born with a magic backpack full of all the powerful images and stories and blessings to implement in Capricorn into actual structures of governance. So it's like, and his chart also is wonderful to watch, and I'll say it and translate it, but Pluto, death, rebirth, intensity, is squaring Letitia James and Zoran's Mercury. They're doing great with it. Pluto, how to navigate the Pluto intensity of collapse that we're going to address is if you have a mission, then it's like rocket fuel. right? And so you cooperate. We go, magic is a willingness to cooperate with everything. So I love that symmetry. And AOC and Bernie have the same Mercury, 3 Libra, which is dawn of a new day, reveals everything changed. That's so darling. In the chart of now, we have the moon in Virgo. My moon's in Virgo too, which is micro language craft, and it does square Mars and Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. And when I see that in somebody's chart, I go, oh, so you want to do everything perfectly, right? And there's a challenge to that. So that's also why we can all get, fractious. But anyway, but in that spirit, notes, all right, we'll see. Random, we're on a journey together. I'm so delighted at who's here. People I haven't seen in a million years. People I've just met, memory of the future, but what a great gathering. And people really drove a long way to get here, and some people strolled over. But so we got to invite the dead and the ancestors. I want to invite in Philip K. Dick as a great narrator for now. And I love something he wrote about hidden aid in times of danger. And he said, my incompetence had called these invisible friends forth. Had I been more gifted, I would not know of them. It was in my mind a good trade. Because of my limitations, an entire new universe had revealed itself to me, a benign and living hyper-environment endowed with absolute wisdom. Wow, I said to myself, you can't beat that. So I like that even our befoiblements bring us to our knees, in which we go, help, and backstage goes, we want to help, but we need to be asked. We go, all right, we're helping. So I love that dynamic. I love things I often replay. Letitia James, I don't know how many of you have heard her speak, right? She's lately been chanting, too pale, too male, too stale. It's like bringing chanting and rhythm back into public life. That's great. But she does a great thing that is before us all as storytellers. Let's say this is another kind of storytelling, and let's say everyone here is another kind of storyteller. So everything meant as an offering, like, as opposed to an imposition, right? So Letitia James, what she does, Jupiter, the power of storytelling, is also keeper of the 5-act structure of storytelling. Playwright friend taught me this years ago. She said the problem with the modern world is it doesn't know about the 5-act structure of storytelling. 4 acts is tragedy, 5 acts is comedy, not ha-ha, but redemption, new culture. And she said a lot of oppressed people, end with Act 4. We are good, but we are crushed, And she says, you come back here. We're here now in Act 4. The way she explains it, Act 1 is here we are. Act 2 is away. Whoo. Act 3 is oops. Uh-oh. Act 4 is evil, where the malefactors and the cruelty appear to be dominating. And Act 5 is the wedding, the kiss, the redemption, the renaissance. So we're in Act 4, but it behooves all of us to storycraft our way into Act 5. And it is such a tippy, opportune time now, right, to compost our harumphitude, to be willing to talk to everybody, to forge alliances, to change our minds. All of that is a crucial dynamic. So yeah, and magic is simply a willingness to cooperate with everything. So Letitia James, a talk of hers that I played on the radio, and people were like, "Wow!" And I can't do it justice, but she does the whole thing. She takes us down into Act 4, the cruelty, the canceling, the all that we're seeing around us, and then she goes, "I've been trained by adversity. I grew up in Brooklyn. I've been trained by mentors. I went to Howard. I am on mission. I am focused. I am ready. We're coming to take you down, tyranny." And it's like, well, okay, I want to play that every morning, and it's rousing, and it's like, that's what you do with Pluto square Mercury. I'm composting harumphitude around how I see astrology presented out there in the world, which is like, oh, Mars in Libra is in its detriment. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's the patterns are not really to have an opinion about. It's all an assignment, right? So these assignments. So magic is simply a willingness to cooperate with everything. And I like, on YouTube there was this guy Bo of Florida, and he said, in collapsing times, you want an affinity group. He said his in northern Florida He said it's about 13 people. You might know them well or not. And he said his affinity group is made up almost entirely of small C conservatives and hippie anarchists from Berkeley, right? And after Katrina in New Orleans, I was down there, and the most effective groups were right-wing evangelicals and hippie anarchists from Berkeley working together, and again, it's like that. So what Bo says is these affinity groups, you can go, there's a pothole. Is the government going to fix that? And then you go, let's fix it. Who brought what? And it begins an interesting conversation about, what is community and what is the role of government that we all really want to have. And I love seeing years ago E.L. Wilson, great scientist, speaking at the National Cathedral, and he had begun to collaborate with, conservative evangelicals. And people are like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, we gotta, and he said to the people he was working with, we can disagree in the luxury of a future, but we're dedicated now to stewarding and healing the earth. And it's like, right. And he said one thing about the evangelical Christians is once they get into something, they are really organized, right? It's recycling. All right, recycling like nobody's business. And it's like, whoa. And E.L. Wilson said, science and evangelical religion, who brought what? And he said to pull this off, to have the story that draws forth the best of us to participate, it's going to take a religious fervor to be blended in with the science, a real devotion. And I love that in all languages, the word vessel means container and boat. So we are all here right now crafting our vessel of dedication. And then at the end of the evening, we get to get in our boats and set sail. Right. So it's a wonderful thing. So again, crafting our dedication. And we can play with many things. It's a jumpy atmosphere. There absolutely is a descriptive quality of astrology about, that it's jumpy and intense, and we'll get into many things. But then it's also guiding. But I do love, I'm going to imitate, with great respect, Wanda Sykes, right? So Wanda Sykes is a great thing. She says she's on the phone, she's talking to her friend, and they're talking, and she's going, what? And her friend says, Wanda, you seem distracted. What is it? And she goes, I think I left my phone in the restaurant. And her friend says, well, call me back when you find it. Anyway, I love that. It's very much like that. And for our own selves, it's like, where'd I put the phone? Where'd I put that book? Am I losing my mind? Whatever. And I think part of it is playful negotiation. There's a part of us that wants non-guilty reverie and space out. And when we forget things, one way to frame it is, Neptune says, I haven't been given enough non-guilty time for reverence and space out, so I took it. And then you get to cut a deal going, oh, Neptune, part of myself, oh, dreaming, part of myself. If we have non-guilty space out reverie every day, will you give me sharp focus when I need it? And it's like, sure thing. So I like that. And it's like, where'd I put the phone? Where'd we put democracy? Right? I know it's here somewhere. And then part of our play to be able to see things, to cooperate with everything, to see, imagination lays the tracks for the reality train, to see just dissolving out of the human repertoire tyranny, just to begin to experiment. So that the malefactors, the dementors go backstage going, where's tyranny? I know I left it here somewhere. It's not here in the repertoire anymore. It's dissolving, right? And there's all of our mentors, and I want to call on Reverend Ike, and Reverend Ike from the 60s, 70s, but he says, if we can dream it up, we can dream it down, right? Neptune says dissolution is the secret of the great work, to dissolve and reimagine on behalf of everybody. And to have unexpected responses, with tyrants and unfortunate National Guard, whatever, is to see where the opening is. Trickster does open unusual opportunities for conversation, going, good sir, here's a taco and a much better story. This opportune time now to have the all-inclusive story, like E.L. Wilson was guiding with the evangelicals, come this way. Alan Watts says, no sense clinging to the rocks that are falling with you, right? So that I've been hunting for good examples of this. Do people know the meme, the joke of tell the horror movie backwards? I had a bunch, but and I encourage everybody to do that. So Godzilla backwards, right, is a giant lizard repairs buildings and moonwalks back into the ocean. Anyway, so so you can do that. Well, there's a million of them, but I think it's a great idea to tell the horror movie backwards. Neptune dreams and vision with Saturn and Pisces in water sign. We have what's called a grand trine in water. Water reflects a reverse image. So let's try the reverse things. Let's tell the horror movie backwards, and that's also an invitation. Don't mind my notes here. An invitation to tell our horror movie backwards. As we bring into play different parts of this conversation, we go, well, how did we get here, and where did this start, and how do we tell the movie backwards? How do we tell the movie of the American Revolution from here, where it's incomplete, but we need to complete it, backwards? And grateful to many people here, Sarah Wilka, and fabulous David Graeber, who wrote The Dawn of Everything, The History of Human Gathering. And he spent 10 years writing that book and then died. Hello, we need your help. And, he said, among his last words were, always remember that human society has had the capacity to transform from authoritarian to egalitarian in what might seem a historic instant, right? Those are his words. So going backwards, and I also call upon my wonderful friend Jerome McGeorge, one of the co-founders of Organic Valley and a great astrologer and a great worker with native people for 60, 70 years. And he says, the Onondaga, the Iroquois nation, the founding fathers met with them on July 3rd, 1776, to ask permission to declare the Declaration of Independence. And they were given it in the sense of, we won't stand in your way. Again, going backwards, and David Graeber brings up a lot of this too. When the Pilgrims first came to this country, they were appalled when they met, First Nation people. They said, "Do you know that these people do not beat their wives or children? They must be savages." Right? And many of the, Onondaga and Iroquois went to Europe to observe and go, "You call this a culture? You will not behave unless there's punishment? This is very primitive culture you have here." And the founding fathers met with them, deriving much of democracy. And again, the First Nation people said, well, where are your women? It won't work without women. The Council of Grandmothers that has the veto, that picks the war chief, that can veto any of it. And he said, when Iroquois women had complete autonomy, it was considered completely fine to have babies with different men, all of that, So we're going back to that. So yeah, only the clan mothers could name a war chief. And we go, right. So just to bring this back, like, where did it go wrong? I've been I've watched 3 times the series Turn, which is about spies in the Revolutionary War, and it's a pretty compelling, great story. But part of our assignment is to think of the Trumpian Dementors as a grotesque animation of America's shadow. Because, back when there was sort of normal evil, right? This is just visible, vulgar evil. And the Revolutionary War telling is important too, because George Washington promised those enslaved that if they fought for the revolution, they would be freed. And afterwards he goes, it's just not the right time. All of the assassinations in America's history, all of the Latin American country leaning to the left, eliminate them. There's huge warships off of Venezuela now. I mean, we're at this very tippy time. So everything that we do and imagine, Terry Pratchett says, magic is easy. You just find the fulcrum and push, or at a fulcrum, right? And there's disarray. And wonderful Heather Cox Richardson, great historian, indefatigable writer, she says, and no fixed polarity opinions, and we want many, many conversing's, many stories all at once. And she says, everybody, she said Saturday night, people were like, oh, the Democrats caved, whatever. And she goes, but Sunday night was different. And she said, think of it more like in pool where the cue ball is hitting the balls. Poof, there's a lot in motion. Adelita being confirmed, we go, release the Epstein files. and the Columbus files, and the Israel files, and the settler colonial files, and the Old Testament files. Release all the files, right? All the files. Yeah, because each tragedy yearns for redemption. Each Act 4, is wanting us to be the storyteller and story crafter for Act 5. And it's part of, Pluto says redemption lies in brewing medicine for others. It's, as many of you know, I've been just, always fresh language. And just the word trauma, it's been good for 50 years, but let's try some other stuff, because the word trauma doesn't really get us anywhere. Not to deny that it exists, but in a Pluto way, what I found for myself to be completely true and just offer it to you is that, to change the word trauma to my dangerous, beautiful assignment. And you can see that with the Parkland youth who survived the school shooting and incredible dedication. I've experienced this in my own life. I just invite people to entertain that possibility, because my dangerous, beautiful assignment, you're brewing medicine, and I've seen where the horribleness brewed into medicine can prevent that for others. I've seen this, and I love. Everything that's ever been heartening comes back to us. I was doing a reading for a woman in person years ago, and she was in a truly dangerous marriage, like physically violent, dangerous, and she couldn't leave for all the reasons, or she wouldn't, that we've that we've heard. And I said, okay, we understand. But so I said to her, okay, and see, as we cultivate Trickster, it comes through us when I said, okay, but the entire team of women in similar circumstances is counting on you. And she was like, really? Really? Bleeping hell. Went home, got a restraining order, kicked the guy out, started, volunteered at a women's shelter, completely changed her life. So sometimes our shadow is our goodness, that we would do for others what we might not do for ourselves. And nature says to us, the entire earth is counting on us. And it's like, really? Okay, then. We're part of a team. That's a crucial dynamic. So how did we get here, and where are we going? So, yeah, Jupiter is in Cancer. It's called exalted in the sign of Cancer. I love the exaltations in astrology. Why should Jupiter, curiosity, storytelling, and blessing, be exalted in the sign of Cancer, providing nourishment? Until Scheherazade, the great folk hero of the 1001 Nights, power of the woman storyteller to liberate the entire situation. And she says, people need stories even more than they need bread. It's like, right. So Jupiter in Cancer, Cancerian people, very often historians. History is the womb of time. And, there's the old saw, the Santayana saw, in which she says, those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. And then somebody adds, those who suppress the teaching of history intend to repeat it, right? And it's like, that's a good one. So I've been using this since I discovered it, and some of you have heard me say this before, but I think it's so crucial. So Werner von Braun, Nazi rocket scientist, war criminal in World War II, after the war, America goes, you're our kind of guy. Come on over and start the future NASA in Alabama. And Werner von Braun is obsessed with going to Mars. And he writes a science fiction book called Project Mars. Somebody said yes. You know it. Right. And in that book, the leader of Mars, his title is, he's called the Elon. And Elon Musk's grandfather and father read that novel, and they go, "By Jiminy, we're going to call our son Elon after the Nazi war criminals' science fiction weird thing about going to Mars." Right. So, but wait, there's more. Right. So. Bill Barr was the attorney general when Epstein died. I like saying Epstein died of Epstein-Barr disease. His father, so Bill Barr's father, Don Barr, ran this prestigious girls' school in New York that was the first job that Jeffrey Epstein had. And Don Barr also obsessed with going to Mars and wrote a terrible, nobody's read it, science fiction novel in which having sex with teen girls was essential to getting to Mars, right? It's so one of the narratives now with Peter Thiel and all these people, we're in this infantile, uninitiated Mars, puer, no empathy, all, craziness. story. We're in their science fiction dystopian nightmare, right? So let's put it into the cauldron. Let's put it into the cauldron. And just for the playful efficacy, it was my friend Pat Ewing that I collaborate with. She's a pragmatic political operative. And she was the first person who told me in our election magic council about Leonard Leo and dark money. And she said she likes to think of him as the Monopoly man, right? Because he looks that way, with giant bags of money. And so our team, experiment, said, well, then we are coyotes, are we not? We are tricksters. Let's bite holes in those bags. So the so the money leaks out and irrigates, the whatever. And Pat reported back going, it happened. Leonard Leo said, I had $1 billion here, and I seems to have misplaced it. And we all, so it's experiment with all of our skills, not deriving status, not presuming, not believing, but experimenting. Uranus Trickster says it's nature's evolutionary trickster genius. It has no category but success, fail. It's try that, and try that and not be disappointed. Try that. Nope. Try that. Nope. Try that. Keep trying stuff. So there's that, and right, history repeating itself. There are many, many good people doing incredible research and detective work and tracking things down. Right now, as we speak, the sun is in Scorpio, of course, but Venus in Scorpio, dark moon Lilith, they're both at 7 Scorpio, which is powerful dragon, and that's the detective part of all of us. So there's some pretty great detectives out there. And so this young woman was saying, I'm not saying this is true, but here's what I'm tracking. There are 3,000 detainees from Chicago who are missing. There's no record. The people from the Alligator concentration camp in Florida, 1,200 people, they're missing. Nobody knows where they are. And so she's tracking that and saying some of them, they found the stories. Some of them were moved 5 times from Florida to ending up at an ICE facility that had an arrangement with a hospital in Hawaii that had a contract with Elon Musk's Cyberlink. Cyberlink is interested in, well, if we're going to go to Mars, we have to redesign humans to be able to live on Mars. So these are insane boys with a lot of money, right? So, and so she says we should track these people, because it used to be that detainees were put into solitary confinement for 8 days. Now they're put into solitary confinement for 38 days. You can do anything to anybody in 38 days. And so it's part of our dedication to be a voice. We will not forget you. We will not, and people's assignment, she's doing incredible work. And she says, I just want larger voices to take on this story. And she says, we have our Mengele, right? We have our Mengele, the whole Nazi dynamic thing. And apocalypse means revelation, right? So Uranus Trickster is in Gemini, and it just retrograded back into Taurus, meaning, so Uranus in Gemini, which is where it was when this country was founded, we'll get to this thing too, reveal everything. So another person I admire that I found, again, Instagram, TikTok, there's really serious teammates out there. This young woman, Cy Cantrell, and she's reporting on the work of complexity scientists. What a good idea. Studying the whole big thing. And she says, what we sort of already know, the simultaneous strain creates a failure cascade. And she said, most systems are flying blind, right? Because we're in this whole new thing. And she said, what keeps complexity scientists up at night is called mixed transition. And it's the illusion of sudden. And the way she depicts it as like a red rectangle, and it looks red, but underneath all this change, and then suddenly the whole thing's gone. And she says you can't go back because the systems are gone. So here we are. What a good community, and there might be many people, and I include myself too, who haven't been, out and about in years, right? But here we are, because as things collapse, it's like, well, all we have is us, but us is quite a lot. And 71% of the countries in the world are authoritarian, but not the people. And again, who brought what? And people creating these systems and the likes of you good beings here. So she said, And it was so laid out, and I posted it a number of places, and I can provide you the link to all these people. So the failure cascade, and she says usually complexity, and relatedness, and you see the world and the web and the connective is a good thing. But when it goes awry, it's a liability, because then it's like dominoes. The cascading failure, the mixed transition, the illusion of sudden. The illusion of sudden. And she said complexity scientists think that we're 4 to 6 weeks out from that. And it's like, And then she talks about regime collapse. And she said, well, regimes collapse when the elites withdraw their support, when the cost of staying there, and that's a larger conversation, because obviously it's all of humans and animals and everybody too. And she goes, we're about 4 months out from that, say the complexity scientists. So we're headed for, wild times. What a tippy time, but then how to activate all of our skills. The Mars fantasy is like the lack of initiation of Mars, the MAGA young boy problems, the guns, the cult versus community, right? So Pluto in Aquarius, brings up the shadow of community, which is cult. A cult is where we outsource our authority. So I like to say, let's take the cult out of culture, and culture and community are crucial. So as we head into failure cascades, and what are the qualities we most want to cultivate? So everything can be liberating or imprisoning. So to react to anything is not free. To cultivate an ever-expanding repertoire of responses, right, is to ally with nature's evolutionary genius. And so right now, especially, to be surprising is crucial. I got, let's see, and then every now and then I see the notes and I go, oh, what's that doing here? But so Black Tuesday, we might get back to that. We'll see if we come back. So quirky things. I remember at a poetry conference where it was me and Mary Oliver and many other people. It was really wonderful. But I was, maybe crossing the line, critiquing some of the Abrahamic religions, and a rabbi came up to me and said, I've never been so insulted in all my life. And I go, the evening is young. And then a friend said, these appointments, these serendipitous appointments, a friend said, I have to bring Rabbi White over to your house. You have to meet for tea. This was 2012, but memorable. I'm like, sure, okay. So Rabbi White was a big deal rabbi. He was head of Jewish studies at Georgetown. But he was very playful and deeply cultivated. And I go, Rabbi White, let me run this by you. I go, I think of the Orthodox religions as like shipwrecks on which barnacles and beautiful coral has grown. And he goes, that's perfect. I go, you are a playful rabbi. That's really fun, So I love that. And that brings me to, some of my favorite recent books and radio guests, which is John Fugelsang, who wrote a book called The Separation of Church and Hate. It's very smart. So his mother was a nun, his father was a priest. They broke their vows to have him, but he grew up with the actual teachings of Jesus, right? Welcome the stranger, complete equality with women. And so he's written this book, and it's also great on Audible because he's a Gemini comedian and profound. And he's using his skills to smuggle strategy into mainstream culture. And so the book, I highly recommend it. No matter how much you know or don't know about the Bible, there's always more to know. But each chapter is a handbook, and it doesn't require belief. His strategy is don't argue with right-wing evangelicals. Make them argue with Jesus. It's like, it's really smart. Jesus is really on our team. I mean, and so we love that. Thank you, John Fugelsang. And then because of the John Fugelsang show, I got an email from someone that I hadn't heard of named Sam Daly Harris. And he's like, I liked your show with John Fugelsang, and I've done this 40 years of work in the world that's effective about ending child poverty. And I've written a book on, reclaiming democracy. And, and he said, I'm in DC, I can drive the book over to you. I'm like, that is so enthusiastic. Just send it to me. And this is, again, for all of us to change anything rigid, like, oh no, anything polarity. Because it's like John Michael Greer, learned druid, says, if you want people to get nothing done but heat and conflict, convince them they're on one side of something. You will only get polarity and heat that feeds tyranny. What two needs is three, which is the unifying story. And so Sam Daly Harris, I didn't really know about him. And then I found out that, because of him, Muhammad Yunus, the creator of micro lending, microfinancing, it became a big thing. And I go, oh. So I hosted him on the radio, and Sam Daly Harris, and he's all about, negotiate with your representatives. Everybody know who your representative. I'm lucky in Maryland, Jamie Raskin, but know your representative, especially if your representative is a Republican dingbat. And he coaches people on how to talk, right? To go into a meeting with somebody is completely antagonistic to what you hold to be dear. And this is, I work with Pacifica, right? And they're like, no, we're not going to talk to anybody different than us. And it's like, I think it's time. But I love his 3 questions that he sends people in with. What would it take to change your mind? And usually people go, nothing will change your mind. And then the second question is, could you say more about that? And I love that. I love that because I know the Code Pink and the everybody who are like chasing people down the hall, but this guy is effective, right? I mean, that's the crucial thing. And the third question is, could you say more about that? Which just, I love that. And the third one is, why do you think that is? Anyway, so then you have a conversation, and this is such an opportune time now. Because the cue balls hit the billiards. It's like there's no certainty. There never really was. Certainty's a booby prize, but now there really is none. It's all in play. So I love that as a skill, definitely. And there's a lot to be aware of. Thank goodness there's more than one of us. The dangers and the solutions. 200+ million acres of public land are about to be auctioned to the highest bidder now, and the highest bidder is oil and gas, and they've already repealed the Public Lands Act, and I know so many indefatigable people, Sarah James, Gwich'in, and in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, who for 50 years has been protecting it, against all odds, and they're opening it up for drilling again, and that's called the place where all life begins. There's something about tyranny hates community, because tyranny is the toxic mimic of community. Animal, species community, human community. So the Bureau of Land Management is run by Bill Groffey, who's an oil and gas executive. And they're now, people are saying, we're being distracted by this horrific thing from this other horrific thing. And I love Trey Crowder. I follow him, redneck comedy, wonderful. But he said, when people are like, well, this is a distraction from the Epstein files, it's like, yes, let's say somebody kidnapped your Mima, and then somebody else set your house on fire, and people go, that's just a distraction from your Mima being kidnapped. And he goes, it is, but it's also important that your house is on fire. We want to be able to have multiple stories at once, so I like that part. But again, just being aware of what's at risk. And that's part of the grief and the kinship and the experimenting with forming alliances across species borders. So I'm wearing my Flow t-shirt. How many people have seen the movie Flow? It's so wonderful. It's such a big dream. It's so pertinent. It was magic. It turned itself on my TV going, what is this? Oh, because it's about how to navigate a drowning, collapsing world. And the answers are great. One, there's no humans, which is kind of a nice break. There's no language, but there's much communication. And the answer is, how do we navigate a drowning and collapsing world? And it's powerful, visual, by making unusual alliances across species borders. And we're invited to ask big questions like, what is unique to humans? And to come up with our own definitions. So I think what might be unique to humans is our responsibility and capacity to borrow qualities of intelligence from flora, fauna, from the plants and animals to negotiate. I turn often to Terry Pratchett's work, in which Granny Weatherwax, an inspiring figure, she says to the owl, "Owl, owl, may I fly inside your head tonight?" And the owl says, "Since you ask so politely, hop in." Experiment. What scientists call junk DNA, people are now saying that's our participatory kinship DNA that's coming alive now. Cooperate. And we go, yeah, accountability is the sine qua non for democracy. And how do we give liberating blessings? My current, for myself, definition of grievance, because grievance feeds tyranny, is anything that's an impediment to me wishing a liberating blessing to someone or something, which is part of, as we get to language craft, liberating language. I like, from a conversation with a friend, redefining the word forgive as to mean to give energy for change. Because then whom couldn't we forgive? Including ourselves, for small or large things. I forgive myself for using a styrofoam cup, or larger dynamics. And it's also part of when we address the malefactors, the dementors. We go, because we are friends of Trump's soul, we are friends of his incarceration and accountability, because it's not good for anybody to get away with tyranny. I think that's a useful thing. And it's also why I've been, friends know this of late, where I find solace is watching Columbo reruns. And it started in the 70s. Steven Spielberg, I know more now than almost directed the first episode. But like the earliest, and this is all kind of humming in our availability now with Venus and Dark Moon, Lilith and Scorpio, our detective selves. So the oldest detective novels in the world are 231 BC in China. And they, like Columbo, you start off knowing who did it. Like we all kind of know who did who's doing the crime. So you start off knowing who did it, and then the novel 231 BC and Columbo is the deft bringing to accountability. It's so satisfying, right? After too much news, I go, another episode of Columbo, perhaps. Did a Peter Falk, Columbo's superpower of being underestimated and not minding people heaping scorn on him, doesn't care. And it's really wonderful. It's like Chiron is also a body in play and in dynamic pattern here now too. So Chiron was the first mentor. He's a centaur mentor. And he creates a school for future cultural heroes, right? And this is all in play now too. And their tasks are impossible, and they always succeed when they study with Chiron. So in Chiron's mythology, to be underestimated is considered a positive strategic advantage. Because if you're going to do something impossible, might as well make it a surprise. So I love that. We might have that as part of our repertoire, to be underestimated. And it also helps any of the grievance of, progressives or whatever, going, those people won't let me in, they don't take me seriously, whatever. See, in this myth, we go, that's excellent. You get into Chiron's school. Never mind that. And I'm always invoking Terry Pratchett's animistic novels, especially I Shall Wear Midnight, where the cunning man has come to town and created mob mind. And the young girl witch says her job is to dissolve that, but she says it's everywhere. Like when we say to ourselves, like, oh, I don't know why I had that mean thought about that stranger or that person I just met or a friend, or I don't know why I said that. It's like, it's mob mind, possessed, right? Atmosphere, which is why we want to be artists of atmosphere, and to even just experiment. I like filling the Neptunian atmosphere with lavender and psilocybe mushrooms and, wafting it out. And I once got the chief of police in Atlanta to join me. I said, are you worried about Tulsa? He's like, oh, and I said, well, our Trickster team, we're creating imaginary, real, an atmosphere of psilocybe mushrooms and lavender to waft over Tulsa. And he's like, I'm game for that. Right. So cross borders, woof woof want to play. You never know, right? You never know who might, especially now in this changing field. We want to be liberating. So the young girl witch, Tiffany Aiken in that novel, comes to find out, she says, the cunning man, tyranny, finds purchase in all whose hearts are full of grievance. And it's like, whoa, the fate of the world requires all of us to compost our grievance. And at first I feel like I don't have grievance, and then it's like, woohoo, woohoo. And to throw it into Pluto's cauldron liberated into grief. It's why, to react to anything is not free, to cultivate responses is free. And right now, it's been going pretty well, the citizens, right, to not ignite that polarity conflagration that, is, and so we want to be very cool, very cool. So Saturn and Neptune, the last degrees of the zodiac, say all the powerful teachings, all the metaphors, all the poetry, all the music that has ever moved humans to goodness is available now for fresh expression. And Saturn in Santeria is Obatala, and Saturn is the keeper of the cool head. Wise leadership is the cool head. And our word, I've loved this for years. Our word cool, popularized by jazz musicians in the 40s, is a Yoruba word, kulu, and it meant completely responsible. The cool guy takes care of the community. And it also means temperature, like in English. And they said words are magic, and we can do it now. They said to literally imagine our heads as cool, temperature cool, just experiment, moving all the heat in the head to where it belongs in the heart, right? So it's cool head, warm heart, opposite of road rage, which is hot head, cold heart. So cool head, warm heart allows us to enter into hot situations as agents of cool out. Just that this is things just for us to experiment with and practice and customize in everyone's unique way. And it's part of the shapeshift. It's like to protect water, adopt the strategies of water. To protect wolves, become like wolves. To whatever you love, to form a contract with that and experiment. And because I have coyote hair here from Stella Coyote, the coyote I lived with for 19 years, 2 months, 2 weeks, and 2 days, she sends coyote fur. And so this is for our trickster selves. And for coyotes, it was a worthy experiment, spending time with Stella Coyote, of reciprocal blessing and evolutionary advancement for both of us. And as the coyote got to be 18, 19 years old, I go, our deal is working out for you now, Stella. I can give you what nature would not, which is a safe old age. And in her safe old age, all kinds of qualities of intelligence unfurled. Yes, hearing and sight were diminished, but telepathy and dreaming together. And so if we have a safe old age, social security for all beings, right? It's an evolutionary assist. And that's one of our blessings. May we have a safe old age, and may we wish that for all beings. So Stella is here to by the power of, it's some of her fur. She says, oh, trickster ingenuity in each heart, open the path for each person here, that we may be danced into place where we can do the most good, have the most fun, cultivate and contribute our gifts to the community in a manner of reciprocal blessing. There we go. Yeah, so we're in, I like that Saturn, our dedication, is retrograde, inward. Planets appear to move backwards from the Earth's perspective, called retrograde motion. There's a lot of retrograde right now. I like thinking of it as a planetary intelligence is going on a vision quest to remember its true function. So Saturn retrograde goes direct on Thanksgiving. I think that's very intriguing. So it's a time of deep dedication. Now, you could say, people go, oh, Saturn, what? But I love my friend of a million years, Sylvia goes, people go, Saturn, might get something done. Oh, no. So we're in a Mercury retrograde. It's not a justification for anything. It's just an assignment. It retrograde on the 9th, until the 29th of this month. Saturn retrograde inward goes direct on Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving really wants to be a time of deep dedication, each person's dedicated craft, in some powerful way. There's a new moon on November 19th. November 19th is the anniversary of the Gettysburg Address. The government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from this earth. That's a good dedication. And we know that the founding fathers, largely Masons, knew that the revolution was not complete. It's the top of the pyramid is not settled on its base. But they did put in place And in the city of Washington, there's a great book called The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital. It's not a New Age fantasy. It's really scholarly, profound. And so the Masons, a lot of the Masonic impulse was part of the revolution, and they knew it wasn't complete. And just as a sidebar, I love when Mao Zedong was asked what he thought of the French Revolution, he said, "It's too soon to say." Anyway, so that's fun. So in the city of D.C., they put in place things to be called upon at a time of danger. It's like King Arthur. It's like High John the Conqueror. It's like all mythologies have this idea of like calling on help, humbled by the horror and cruelty of the situation, to call on more than ourselves, that we throw humanism into the cauldron, the hubris of humanism, and ladle out the truth of animism, participatory kinship. And we say, I like to say animism, it's not a belief, it's just good manners, right? And as we decondition, and we're in this powerful deconditioning time, we relax into intrinsic animism. Like I love Bill McKibben with Akaya Windwood on the radio some months back, and I said, who's your mentor? It doesn't have to be human. And Akaya said, oh, this powerful redwood outside my... And Bill was like, I'm not a tree hugger because that's a sentimental dismissal of things, and I'm not. And I go, you're safe here, Bill. Really, you're safe. And he goes, it's a tree. I talk to it every day. It's like, it's intrinsic to us. It's like there was a woman giving a TED talk on cannabis, and somebody asked her, like, why do people laugh foolishly when they smoke cannabis, right? And the speaker said, no, it's not that cannabis causes laughter. We are a laughing species. It relaxes the inhibitions. We're meant to be laughing species, right? So I do love that. So there's forgetting and remembering. That's a piece on P.L. Travers, who wrote the Mary Poppins books, that are quite radical. Not the movie. She hated the movie. But it's so Mary is a shaman. Mary, and as P.L. Travers wrote her, and she's entrusted with the twins, Gemini twins, who understand the language of the wind and the animals and the water. And she says to them, you're going to forget. And there's this powerful moment where they forget, right? So it's like forgetting and remembering and being available. And I'm also using, Edgar Cayce was a true psychic who in the 40s predicted that there would be a great tidal wave, a tsunami on the East Coast in 1970-ish. And what there was Watergate. So I want to play with people individually, on our own or in groups or whatever, to experiment, with being able to go backstage and go, oh, fire, oh, water, oh, elements, oh, animals, oh, plants. We have been a very rude rogue species. Can we negotiate to make some of the horror coming at all of us metaphoric rather than literal? And that's the thing that when I first adopted Stella Coyote and hosted Lakota Elder on the radio, and he goes, nothing smarter. And he said, we Lakota did not hunt alone. Those gifted could go into a reverie or a trance backstage, and those people, part of our team, would broker a working alliance across species borders. And we would all hunt together with the wolves and coyotes for a season. And if you want to destroy our culture and the world, have people forget this. And see, now is a time, Saturn and Neptune have gone back into the very last degrees of the zodiac Pisces. They went from Pisces to Aries to Pisces back into Aries. It's action, vision, action, vision, action. And where Pisces is radical, it's everything that has been forgotten that must be remembered. And each part of us has an assignment going, okay, I'm on it, known or unknown. And the Pisces Neptune realm says, let's throw complaining, etc., into the cauldron and ladle out wonder. And it says whatever we wonder about is going to magnetize a responsive guiding augury. I wonder what I should do. I wonder what about this thing. But I wonder, again, to be able to experiment with our junk DNA to broker working alliances. It's like, replaying the Susan Griffin radio show tomorrow that I did with her, a wonderful member of the Council of Unreasonable Women. And when the Council of Unreasonable Women was convened in 2002, I think, pretty cool. But that was when there was a plan to store nuclear waste at the base of Yucca Mountain. And drawing on the activism of indigenous Hawaiian people, my buddies who'd said, invite in Pele, invite in the earth to express her opinion. And so I said to the Council of Unreasonable Women, let's invite Yucca Mountain to express her opinion about this storage project, right? And many people were like, no, we're progressives. We kick butt. We don't do this nonsense. I'm like, just try it. Let's just see, And so we did. We invited Yucca Mountain to express her opinion. The next morning, there was an earthquake at the base of Yucca Mountain, and they changed their plans. Remember, the Uwa people in Colombia were deeply grieving that Standard Oil was moving in to destroy their land. And I heard this story, and I met people who were living there, and they go, no, this is really true. And they go, wait a minute, what have we forgotten that we must remember? We remember our ancestors knew about communing ritual, and they did deep months of ritual, and they asked the oil to hide. And Standard Oil did 5 drills, came up dry, moved on. This is the realm of experiment with every part of our affinity, we really want that. So now, Uranus and Gemini, and then back into Taurus and Gemini, liberating language, reframing. So I've been playing this because I love it so much on the radio, and I'm going to play it again in a moment here. It's by Brian Deshaun Watson, Reframe, again, liberating language. So let's play that now. Reframe.
Don't say I'm stressed. Say my body is preparing me to rise from this challenge. This reframes stress into energy, turning cortisol into courage. Don't say I have to do this. Say I get to do this. This shifts the brain from pressure to gratitude, increasing motivation. Don't say I'll try. Say I commit. Try signals doubt, but commit programs the subconscious for a follow-through. Don't say, I'm bad at this. Say, I'm still learning this. Your brain loves growth. This rewires failure into progress. Don't say, I don't have time. Say, it's not my priority. This brutal truth exposes what you truly value. Don't say, that's just who I am. Say, that's who I've been, but not who I must stay. Identity is flexible. This creates mental freedom. Don't say, this always happens to me. Say, what can I learn from it this time? This stops victimhood and activates problem-solving mode. Don't say, I don't know. Say, I don't know yet. This adds growth mindset, tricking the brain to search for answers. Don't say, I'm nervous. Say, I'm excited. The brain cannot tell the difference. You control the framing. Don't say it's impossible. Say it hasn't been done by me yet. This opens possibility and dissolves mental barriers. Don't say, I can't do this. Say, how can I do this? Asking questions activates problem-solving circuits. Don't say I failed. Say, I've discovered one way it doesn't work. This resets failure into data. Don't say I'm stuck. Say, I'm pausing to reset. This turns paralysis into preparation, reducing anxiety. Don't say they lucky. Say they created opportunities. This shifts envy into responsibility and empowerment. Don't say I wish, say I will. Wish signals helplessness. Will directs action. Don't say I'm overwhelmed. Say I'm prioritizing. This gives the mind order instead of chaos. Don't say this is hard. Say this is stretching me. This frames difficulty as growth, not as punishment. Don't say, I don't belong here. Say, I'm learning to belong here. This destroys imposter syndrome with progression language. Don't say, why me? Say, why not me? This turns suffering into strength, unlocking resilience. Do not say, I've lost everything. Say, now I have the space to build better. This transforms despair into renewal, psychology of rebirth. So, just keep that in mind.
I love that guy. I don't know. For years, I've been doing got to, get to, and he's got that. I'm sure we came up, and also the magic word, yet. It's a little word that's a key that unlocks the circle into a spiral. We haven't done this yet. We haven't had a real democracy yet. We have, just do the thing, critique and vision, critique and vision. Critique without vision is complicitous with dominance and colonialism, just for the fun of it. And the Thai saying, because we were never colonized, we never lost our animism. Participatory animism is decolonizing, relaxing into that. So for now and the last couple of years, America's in what's called its Pluto return, although Pluto is about to be Pluto's out of bounds, right? And just think of the fact, and then whatever metaphor, right? So Pluto's out of bounds, meaning it's outside the ecliptic from August 31st, 2025 to November 18th, 2035. Let's all get back together then, or if not before. But one of the frames is, in America, if what we're addressing, the tyranny, is a monstrous animation of unaddressed in shadow, and again, rituals of truth saying, speak truth, be power, says Uranus in Gemini, Taurus, back and forth. And so America's been in its Pluto return, which is dredging all of this up that we want to be a part of to metabolize, again, into nutrient for actual democracy. The secret architecture of our nation's capital, what I've been getting great good out of, not only are there things in place that want to be brought alive at a time of danger, and go, now would be good. I mean, Washington has more dedicated zodiacs than any city in the world. And the capital itself was designed by the Masons with astrology and ritual, east-west, to be aligned with the equinoxes. And I love that there's engravings of George Washington digging the hole for the foundation stone. The foundation stone goes deep into the earth, and then with ceremony and astrology appropriate, and a week later, you put the keystone, and you're inviting the chthonic powers of the earth going, is this building acceptable to you? Right? It's how people used to do things, right? Oh, it is good. And I love that part. And the Capitol dome was designed to be on earth as it is in heaven, a place of deep reflection where people would go, to come into accord. The Masons must be pretty pissed off, but eager to be invited back in. But I think with, kick butt Scorpio women and good-hearted men, in DC, we want to think of the magic, think of the buildings coming alive, think of the cornerstone and the chthonic powers of the earth. The archives are built on top of where slaves were sold. The river Tiber used to be above ground, and it's built right there, and it's like, whoa. And then I draw upon and I pray for the continued protection of this incredible piece of art, James Hampton's Throne of the Third Heaven. And for me, it's just a keeper of the soul of this country, and it's in the Museum of American Art, Smithsonian, but we want to keep it safe. And he was a World War II veteran from Ellery, South Carolina, moved to D.C. Nobody knew about him. He worked, hard in many jobs and janitorial jobs, but he had a vision of the Virgin Mary appearing on top of the Washington Monument, telling him to build this throne of the third heaven. And so he rented a garage, and he, using light bulbs and gum wrappers and things, only showed it to one person, died. Washington Post reporter was going to rent this garage, open it up, and it's like, oh my God, you can see it. You can see it online, and it's like, it's only a port. It goes on, but it's like some Aztec genius, like powerful. I went there the first time when Trump was elected, and I threw the I Ching that said corruption and pestilence. Best go to see James Hampton's thing. And it's like, whoa, it's the secret soul of America. It's very powerful. There's a lot of Gullah, South Carolina language, but also there's English that just goes, fear not, and then languages that no one knows. But it's a powerful place in the city. So America's Uranus return. So first we have the Pluto return, which we're in. Then we have the Uranus return, which is the revolutionary, ongoing revolution. And Uranus was at 8 Gemini when the country was founded, whose image is a quiver filled with arrows. And I like thinking of each one of us with a quiver filled with arrows, and let each arrow be tipped with compassion, with tyranny as its target. Fatum, fatum, fatum. And so the return will start in 2026. The exact return will be 2027, and April 26, 2026 to May 22nd, 2038. Well, Pluto's out of bounds, is the ongoing Uranus return. Okay, so Uranus is every 84 years. It's the third return for America, but it's the first return after America's Pluto return, meaning we address the shadow, then let's come alive. Let's come alive with that. Let's design the egalitarian true democracy culture, and that's really part of the egalitarian, blessing that we want to embody, the spicy blessing etiquette. And just to prime the pump, this is meant for just everybody to play and continue. We're allowed to set in motion, any liberating blessing of which we would be the happy recipients. May those abusing power be moved to a place they can no longer harm themselves by harming others. Let it go. Also in our magic backpacks that we got to take away tonight is the power of boomerang, which is, may anything up to no good return to its source with a pie in the face. Right. Boomerang. And so now we're coming to the point where we want to, what do we throw into the cauldron and what shall we ladle out? Let me rummage around here. Many things, and just think, into the cauldron, and what shall we ladle out? I love the Arabic word for many words for crazy, but the Arabic word for crazy is majnoon, crazy for the divine. And I love this meeting. My friend Deborah, whom I met in Syria, lives there, and we went to the Baghdad Cafe. It was just a little outpost in the desert outside Palmyra. And the wonderful Bedouin man who ran it was so fun. And he's like, here, let's dress you as a Bedouin. We'll get married. I'm a very progressive man. I'll have the children for us. And everywhere throughout the cafe were all these altars, fossils he'd found in the desert and feathers and magic things. And, it's not really Islamic. It's animistic. And my friend Deborah said, how did this happen? And he goes, Majnun, right? So I love that as part of our dynamic, and so everything into the cauldron, and what shall we ladle out? And one is, whenever we encounter a daunted, depressed, despairing, or frightened habit pattern, let's imagine our customized trickster, angelic protector stepping into our body so that together we hurl a little lightning sizzle to burn the boring dread circle into a spiral of well-wishing for self and world. So we all have bags of liberating lightning to throw at any closed circle of tyranny to set it free into a spiral. Spirals are nature's way of resolving conflict, right? Quickening the seeds with lightning. I love William Kittredge's poem, really, or prose about a raven rattle from the Tsimshian Indians. And just to paint with words, it's a raven rattle. And on it, he says there are two figures. There's a human reclining in a pose of sexual openness, and he says, and there's a frog mounting, and their tongues, or rather one tongue, slender and arcing from frog to human and human back to frog, saying we are all, of one tongue in this. And he ends by saying, here we are, inextricably one with everything, however tricked, riding in fact on the back of trickiness itself. Right. So that's kind of where we are, right? And again, mutual aid, who brought what, community, participatory animism out of the cauldron, wonderful things. Heretic Coffee in Portland is, giving people free coffee, but also in my own little neighborhood, there were ICE agents in our neighborhood, and the person who owned the little humble sandwich shop, Hispanic workers were going in to get their sandwiches, and the ICE agents pulled up, and the owner of the shop said, here's your sandwiches, no charge. Let me call you an Uber, and you go out the back door, and I'll call you when you can come pick up your car again. We go, yes. Who brought what? Who's watching out for what? We want to ladle that out of the cauldron, right? So Coyote ladling symbiotic mutualism out of the cauldron and spiraling it forth. We have a rousing, fun song, and Uranus Trickster says to each one of us, I am your scheduling booking agent, spirit of intrinsic democracy. I am willing to connect each person here, to the coolest thing possible. And all I want, this is very Coyote, it's a transaction. All I want from each one of you is just an expression of we are willing and we're available, right? So let's give that a try. We are willing and we are available. And Uranus Trickster Coyote says, game on. And so here's our our fun, rousing song, Liberties of Our Country, which is really good. The words are great. Crank it up. Feel free to dance. And thank you all for doing this good work. Here we go.
City, the soldiers march through. The rich drink their whiskey, the poor pay the due. But a voice in the darkness, it rises, it grows. It's the sound of the people, the whole country knows. No king but the people, no crown on that head, no throne for the tyrants, no tears will we shed. We'll stand by each other, whatever may come. No king but the people. The people are one. They've taken our neighbors, in cages they lie. The sick and the weary left broken to die. But their names are our thunder, their memory our flame, and the song that we carry will